Okay guys, so today I'm going over two different sniper builds that's going to help you out against Ruthless difficulty operations. The first one is going to be a high headshot damage build focused on dealing with Majoris, Extremis, and boss enemies. The second one is going to be closer to a shotgun build, dealing with swarms of enemies, as well as having a little bit of hybrid headshot damage, so you're still able to, deal with some of the larger enemies if you want. Going over the headshot damage build first. This is the setup I use pretty much every single game. You're going to be looking at the perks that charge the weapon faster and do extra headshot damage. So all three headhunters here. And then again, you have another perpetual velocity. And this one is what I take increased capacity rather than going for the final perk. I find this one pretty useless, so the extra reserve ammo is much more valuable. And this is the perk tree setup you want to have pretty much every single time. When you're looking at the class perks, I take evasion pretty much every single game. The only reason I would take pattern of excellence is if I'm feeling like using the shot grenades to have some crowd control. I would take this. Maybe you have two melees on your team and you want to have, shot grenades to constantly throw on top of them so you can weaken enemies around. You'll have an easier go at it. As far as emergency override, I never take this. I don't find myself dying very often at all, so I think it's kind of useless. Lingering Concealment, this is what you're going to be taking pretty much every single game. The only time you'd ever take another one is if you take Persistence to help out with allies who are going down a lot, maybe newer to the game. Targeted Shot, you take this every single time. Renewal, again, you take this every single time. Pair it with Squad Renewal, you get 15% flat cooldown on your ability whenever you get a headshot kill, so those combined is just absolutely broken. Lethal Efficiency, this is also something you take every single time. You kill multiple enemies with one shot and you get the charge back. When it comes to this row, you can either take Vantage Point or High Capacity. I prefer Vantage Point because it's fairly easy to stand still for 2 seconds and you get that extra 20% damage. High Capacity is also good. Extra ammo always helps. When it comes to the first row here, Medicaid Adept is what I rock every single game. There's also the option to do block break if you're playing against Chaos and you have a lot of those smaller shield enemies. This can oftentimes be extremely valuable. That being said, I find myself picking up people a lot, so I take Medicaid Adept. Okay, so moving on to the shotgun build, this is the perk tree setup you're going to have for that. You're going to be looking at increased capacity for more ammo. This isn't important. You're going to be looking at taking all three of the amplification perks so that you have a wider radius on your beam. You'll be able to hit more enemies when you hit fire. Increased damage against terminus enemies, which is pretty good. Brutal Rampage is kind of key to this build. Basically, when you kill 3 or more enemies with one shot, you deal 25% more damage for 5 seconds. This is a buff you're constantly going to have up because you're going to be hip firing and killing more than 3 enemies with many of your shots. Increased capacity, 20% more ammo, and then honed precision. Basically, you have less of a weapon spread when hip firing, which is key to this build as well. Now, when it comes to the class perks, pretty much the same as the other class that I went over. The only difference is you'd only want to go evasion for this. I pretty much never take pattern of excellence. When it comes to the other perks here, the only thing I'll mention is I also never take vantage point. Only take the high capacity, so I have a little bit of extra ammo. And then rather than go Medicaid Adept, I almost always go block break here. Because especially against chaos enemies, you're going to have those ones with the shields, and doing 25% extra damage against shielded enemies is it's a pretty big buff. So that being said, these are the builds that I wanted to go over, and hope you guys enjoy using them.